Manhwa title in the right corner of the screen. Enjoy watching. The Sun. God Karya is the name of the greatest deity from the myths of this continent. He was just a ray of light to fly over the continent when there was nothing here except glaciers and wastelands. Descending from the heavens under the cover of flame, he gave fire to the people and carved out a civilization from blood and iron. Karya was revered as the god of the sun after he entered the earth with her. Now he is called the side of war and immortality. All the knights serve him, and faith in him brings victory in every grueling war. Absorbing, all the soldiers shout only one thing: in glory to the god of the sun, all enemies will be burned. However, even the most legendary myth has a dark side that has not yet been revealed. In fact, the brown fly brings only victory and glory. Is there really no darkness from this bright, dazzling story? Even if she had it, who cares? Who dares to put their destiny on fire to get to the truth? What was hidden at the end of this dark story was Miss Hildegard suffered from terrible pain every evening. She felt bad and she knew the reason. Every time she remembered the war and that boy, she feels relieved every morning when the sun rises again. And meanwhile, in a small town in Lindemann's shop, pharmacist Elkin constantly listened to the curses of customers. Although they were guilty of storing herbs incorrectly, he sells herbs here that he grew in the north and can't be stored in a warm place. But people did it anyway, and because of that, the herbs spoiled, and then they got indignant and demanded a refund, all because they couldn't believe the words of one of the northern bastards. When the conversation turned to this, Annette always appeared, who solved all the problems and drove out these uncultured people. Elkin was too kind to everyone not to feel guilty towards the owners of this shop, because they had already received so much criticism for hiring Severianen, and he did not want to cause even more problems. Annette advised him to be ruder to such clients who treat him badly only because he is a northerner. In fact, Elkin knows more about herbs than anyone else, and it would be unprofitable to fire him. Even understanding his own value, Elkin was still worried. Moreover, when he was constantly reminded that he was a northerner and that he was not welcome here, the Northern United Nations and the Southern Kingdom of Mormorant are now just echoes of the history of past years. Elkin's hometown in the north was a single land consisting of several villages, but after a long war it was conquered by the Kingdom of Mormorant, and only ruins remained. The current King Mormades accomplished the great feat of conquering the north and taking the title of King Conqueror to himself. But all this became possible only thanks to the man standing next to the king. This is the Sun Witch Hildegard alias. She is Max and Fire, according to rumors, blessed by the side of the sun, and also the messenger of Kantala and the conqueror of the north. In addition to her countless nicknames, in the north she was also known as the Witch of the Sun, although in reality she was more like a knight. She had the magic of fire and light that could level entire mountains to the ground, as well as the magic of healing that made her immortal and immune to diseases. There were those who actually from her power and also those who were afraid, so the witch hid her identity from everyone except those closest to her. Some believed that she was a tall and old sorceress, while others imagined that she was an attractive and mature woman, capable of seducing both men and women. But one thing was clear. Already strong years she participated in many battles, and now, when the war ended, she received noble status and her own lands. And now she lives somewhere in seclusion. But this is probably even for the best. Annette told Elkin that recently the royal family has been looking for all kinds of doctors, pharmacists, and even tanglers, but the reason is unknown. Annette's sister is a royal knight, so she told everything. And in the entire capital there is no better pharmacist than Elkin's. Although it is not known who exactly they are looking for, it is nice that Annette is so caring. The people in the shop did not look suspicious. They hid themselves under cloaks. They came here to the shop owned by Lindemann specifically to find out the password for the medicinal herbs that are grown here. Elkin was ready to help the customers and pick out something specific for him, but it turned out that they didn't come here for that. They asked directly, "Is he a northerner?" Elkin noticed the swords these people had and immediately understood everything. They said they needed his abilities and pulled out a note with a designated place where he should come tomorrow if he wanted to learn more. Of course, he will get a big reward if he copes with the tasks. Annette and Elkin breathed a sigh of relief when these people left, because they were definitely hostile. The sword that was hidden under the cloak definitely belonged to a royal knight, an elite squad belonging to the royal family. Elkin could not even imagine what made them gather their knights and send them to look for him. Whatever the royal family wants from him, Elkin is not going to help. Now he has an opportunity sent from heaven. When he was little, and there was a war, the Sun Witch killed his parents. The next day, he decided to go to the place indicated in the note. It was a forest, and there was nothing and no one to be seen around. And then, as if from nowhere, a royal knight appeared. This girl introduced herself. Her name is Griselda Elva. They called a pharmacist here because there is an option who needs his knowledge. Elkin wasn't scared because he recognized Annette's sister by her name. But if he was talking to her now, it meant that someone really influential needed the pharmacist's help. So all he had to do was listen to the symptoms of the disease and create the best medicine that could be created based on the description alone. However, he did not even have the opportunity to see the patient in person. Griselda wrote symptoms from the moment the sun is understood. On development of tension of the day, there are no symptoms. But as soon as the sun touches the horizon on tasks, the whole body of the girl seems to burn. And after the onset of night, everything disappears as if nothing had happened. Then her body from head to toe dries up and hardens. But no one even knows what kind of disease it is. This description was too absurd, like a riddle that Elkin had to solve. When you hear about a disease where the body tells you, but he first hears about someone who is sick at sunset and feels great at sunrise, it doesn't sound like a disease, it's a curse. He doesn't know what kind of disease it is, so it's hard to find a specific remedy. Maybe a symptomatic treatment method will work. He brought a bag of medicinal herbs with him and started to take something out of it. Although he looked young, he learned a lot because his parents were also pharmacists. His parents were more experienced than he was, but they knew how to do it years ago during the war. He took out certain dried herbs and told her how to prepare them to make medicine. Even the knight had never seen such herbs. All because they grew in the north. Elkin suggested a solution to the riddle. As the knight asked, the patient will decide whether to use it or not depends only on him, and Elkin's work is finished. When he left, dawn had already begun. Griselda immediately realized that Miss had arrived, although she had no need to come here in person. Miss Hildegard came at dawn, just when her strength was fully restored. She was interested to see this pharmacist and find out what medicine he would offer because he sounded very convincing. Only if he finds out who he is helping, then he definitely cannot hate himself and let anyone find out about Hildegard and her illness. Hildegard looked at the back of this guy leaving, and for some reason it seemed familiar to her. She asked Griselda if she had seen the eyes of this northerner, but unfortunately no, because it was too dark then. Several days passed from this moment. Elkin continued to work calmly, but he was a little absent-minded lately. He never heard from that night whether the herbs worked. So many days had passed, most likely the medicines had run out. Elkin doesn't even know how to contact her himself and whether the patient has recovered from the illness. This could be a great opportunity to get close to the royal family, but most likely these are just his dreams. Hildegard began to suffer again at every sunset. These few days and she was fine, but the medicine ran out and she returned to her previous state. Those medicinal herbs under Severianen ran out a few days ago, and the herbs from the royal doctor don't help at all. Hildegard had gotten used to being in a good state over the past couple of days, so now she was suffering as if for the first time. She ordered that northerner to be brought here, and everyone immediately followed her order. In just a couple of hours, Elkin was already here. He certainly thought it was a good opportunity to join the royal family, but he didn't even know that he would be brought to the castle right now. They didn't even ask him, they just threw him into a carriage and brought him there. I'm looking around now if he realized that this place doesn't look like a royal castle. However, he doesn't know where it is then. And which of the nobles needs his help? A familiar face appeared to him. This knight began to lead somewhere. Approaching the room, she again said that she could not reveal the identity of this girl. Therefore, Elkin should simply consider her an ordinary patient who needs help. Her symptoms first appeared a few months ago, and every night she gets worse now. She's in a terrible state every night. She does not feel discomfort during the day, but can hardly fall asleep at least at dawn because of the terrible moth. However, the herbs that Elkin gave her then softened her attacks a little. The girl is convinced that it is a curse, but if the herbs helped her until they ran out, then it is a disease. The moments when she was tormented by the pain of memories were those very terrible days of the war. Anyone who tried to attack Hildegard in this war was burned alive, so everyone called her a witch. The Northerners couldn't resist such a film for long because they didn't have the same magic. After the end of the war, Hildegard lived peacefully until one moment. One evening at sunset, she felt a terrible pain as if her whole body was burning, and from that moment on, she always felt it. Elkin somehow managed to help her, and now even at night, she felt pretty good. Hildegard has killed countless Northerners without even blinking an eye, and now her life depends on one of them. She had a mask so she could hide her identity, but anyway, no one knows her face, so she doesn't use a mask. Besides, she can easily get rid of anyone if necessary. It's been a long time since she could walk at night, so now that she's woken up, she decided to do just that. At the end of the floor, she saw a light in one of the rooms. Although there should be no servants here, she decided to go inside and check. But as soon as she opened the door, she ran into someone, and a lot of boxes fell down. Hildegard was not hurt. After all, when she fell, she landed on something soft. Seeing this guy in front of her, she remembered that she had to hide her identity from the Northerners. They end up just looking at each other for some time in this position. Elkin became embarrassed and crawled away from her, apologizing for what happened, because he didn't think that someone would be standing behind the door. This girl looked like a maid of honor, but for some reason she was silent, and Elkin didn't know what to do. Hildegard was only thinking about buying it now, but if she did that, she wouldn't be able to get the medicine in the future. Looking at this guy, she immediately remembered the Northerners who cursed her as a witch and a monster. And right now, looking at one of them, she was really going to kill him. But Elkin didn't notice this. He began to worry about this girl because she had a cut on her other side, and he wanted to help treat it. Elkin grabbed it from his hands and only then realized that he had again been too hasty. He always does things before he thinks. Now he asked what this girl could be called. Hildegard froze in place. For some reason, she began to worry so much. In this room, there was a statue of the god Karya. So looking at this, she quickly came up with a name for herself, Kaya. So she was able to meet Elkin, and he offered to look at her wound. It was just a scratch, so he applied some ointment and a bandage. The girl asked why he was here. Elkin said that it was the lady who was going to pee, and asked him to stay here because he was a pharmacist. The deputy's mistress is very sick, and he is helping me with the glow right now, but will have to continue his research to find a better way. Then he asked what Kaya would do. She decided to pretend that she was an ordinary maid and said that she had been working here for a short time. So she got lost, and if she wanted to go where she planned, decided to finish and just leave. Elkin had not yet finished bandaging the wound, so he remained perplexed. Although this is a small cut, but for some reason it was bleeding heavily. Hildegard could heal it right now using her power, but that boy tried so hard to heal her wound. All this time she looked into his eyes, and she is sure that she has definitely seen him before. In the hallway, the maid suddenly bumped into the mistress. Hazy immediately took her back to the room with concern because the mistress had forgotten her mask. The next day, Elkin, of course, didn't get enough sleep. He was so nervous that he spent the whole night unpacking things. Griselda took him to show him around the castle and let him be seen by the other servants. But she never expected to see this during the day. Miss Hildegard dressed in servant's clothes and walked calmly around the castle. Elkin, when he saw Kai, was delighted and said hello, and she smiled at him. Then he wanted to chat with her a little. But Grizel took the maid away to talk alone. She asked the lady what was going on. Who is this Kaya and what happened to her hand? Mistress borrowed this clothes of Hazy maid. She said that this pharmacist saw her face yesterday, so she lied, and said that just maid here. But Griselda is also to blame for leaving the stranger in the castle without the consent of the lady. She did act wrong, but she just wanted him to get better as soon as possible. The lady forgave her. He has something here too. What worries Hildegard? When she looks into the eyes of this pharmacist, he definitely looks familiar, but she can't remember when she saw him. Maybe she experienced it with other Northerners because she saw too many of them. But we need to find out. Griselda said that it was too risky, because even the servants in the castle did not know the lady by sight. It was reckless for them to reveal it now, just because of some Northerner, if the king found out about it. Hildegard didn't care what this old man would find out. It was more important that she felt better now. Thanks to this Northerner, she could move as she wanted and would go crazy if she stayed in a closed room. Griselda gathered all the servants of the estate to introduce the new workers. A new chef Guzdel has appeared, Kai's new maid of honor, and finally Elkin, who will live in the castle as a pharmacist and doctor in the near future. It was him who caused the violent reaction. They immediately realized that he was a northerner just because of his appearance. Elkin encountered this reaction all the time, but each time he couldn't get used to it. But then people started to turn to him because he is a doctor, even though he is a northerner. There are workers here who have health problems, and if he can help, that will be good. Quickly went about their duties. Griselda didn't know if it was possible to leave Miss Hildegard alone, but she decided that nothing bad would happen. Kaya stole the role of the mistress's maid, so she was immediately given responsibilities. Elkin, among other servants, decided to find out who is the real mistress of this castle. But the point is that even the servants do not know this. The only ones who saw her are Lady Griselda and Hazy. Ordinary workers are generally forbidden to enter the third-floor corridor, so no one has ever seen the lady. That's why there isn't much work here. Rumor has it that the lady is the illegitimate daughter of some nobleman, while others claim that she was exiled from another country. Kaya, as the new lady-in-waiting, decided to help with the work, but in the end, no one could stop her. She applied only so much effort that she accidentally cut the board along with the onion. She was so strong and just like a bull, and all because she wanted to cut the onion so quickly before her eyes started to water. At first, it was very strange, but then everyone just laughed, and there was a nice atmosphere in the kitchen. However, the cook was standing in the corner and couldn't even approach because he saw the northerner. Kaya continued to perform the duties of a maid. She did everything wrong, and several days passed. As for washing, she couldn't do anything. And when she needed to make a fire to boil some water, a fire broke out. Even when she tried to embroider something, it turned out very sloppy. In the end, everyone just wanted to stop Kaya and said that it would be better for her not to do anything and go and rest. In the end, she was overwhelmed with her responsibilities and didn't even know what to do. A tramp in the vicinity of the castle, she saw through Elkin's window. Meanwhile, he was in his room writing a letter to his work owner. He could not explain his sudden departure correctly, and just like that, he disappeared. Griselda had forbidden him to even describe his situation in too much detail, so now he said only what was possible. Being in this castle, he felt peace here. It was so quiet, which is very strange for such a big castle. There are few people here, and it has been good for days, and since he arrived here, a large and silent castle, an unknown disease, and the owner of the castle that even the servants have never seen before. The Elkin know only one person who lives in Unity and hides his identity, but they say that the Sunny is quite immortal and immune to all diseases, so she cannot be the owner of this castle. Then perhaps it is a member of the royal family or hiding nobles. Elkin does not know what to do and how to find out the identities of these people. The only thing he knows is that they constantly need him. Now he cannot mindlessly engage in an investigation, because then he will expose Annette, who recommended him to her sister, as well as Mr. and Miss Lindemann. What's more important is that Elkin constantly feels like someone is watching him. Kaya, this strange maid, he tried to behave with her friendly, but she behaved like a cat, and sometimes she looked like a very dangerous predator. Elkin continued to do his job and sometimes showed Kai what he was doing so that she wouldn't get bored. After all, I was freed from all the work. Griselda brought him payment for his hard work. It was a bag of gold coins. It was really a lot. Of course, he still needs to work in the future. But now that he has so much money, Elkin has learned what needs to be done. Was going to send a letter and some money to the city of Lindemann, where he lived before he came here. Hildegard, the guy, sends money to other people for work. Elkin also looked very pleased when I did this, and then they thought about going for a little walk. But passing by the castle, Hildegard heard some noise. The knights at the entrance chased away some boy no matter how he asked them for something. Elkin and Hildegard couldn't pass by and immediately went to check what was going on. This boy said that he lost Finn. This is a horse that his grandmother gave him. He lives in a small village, and when they were returning home, a snake scared the horse and he ran into the forest behind this castle. But these knights do not let him into the forest. Elkin asked them for the child to go just to look for a little. However, the entrance to the castle is strictly prohibited. The surrounding forest, no matter how they asked, couldn't go against the rules. Outsiders approaching the castle without Griselda's permission are considered trespassers. She will not question the punishment of the trespasser. The boy didn't know what to do and just started crying now. He couldn't find his horse. Elkin asked Max to come home and told her that he was about to go into the forest, so Finna is coming with me and will bring him back. So he looks a little calm, this boy left. Elkin said that there is a return to the castle and he will go and look. I am right now. Go with them just to have a look around in this forest because she had nothing to do anyway. All this time someone was watching them again. The forest is behind the castle and the horses are so big it would be easy to find them. Eventually it got boring and they decided to talk. Kaya asked why Elkin sent money to someone else to kill. Then he told his little story. It had been since his parents had died and the war had ended years ago. About that time, he had left his town in the north and was waiting here and there, nursing the sick or selling medicinal herbs that he had dug up in the mountains. So the child was barely able to earn a living. And in one village, he was accused in return only because he was a northerner and the situation did not look very good. However, there were people who saved him, Mr. and Mrs. Lindemann. They helped this little child, and after that, they invited him to help in their shop in the capital. These are the people who took care of Elkin when he had nowhere to go. But Hildegard still didn't understand why he sent them money. Did they really ask for it? The reason was simple. At the moment, he doesn't need the money, so he sent them to the store to support Lindemann. She thought that he was just stupid or naive because he gave money to those who didn't even ask for it and helped a child he had never seen before. Why did he ask Kaya what she did before she got a job? Although she doesn't stand out much, it's clear that she's not from these parts and her parents were probably immigrants. Kaya thought about what to answer, and then suddenly she saw blood on the ground, and they immediately forgot about this conversation. They followed these bloody tracks and eventually came to a lake where horses were lying. This is definitely Finn, Elkin, what they were able to find. But as soon as they came closer, it became clear that the horse was in very bad condition. There is a cliff nearby. And judging by his injuries, it became clear that the horse was so scared that he fell off the cliff after a mad run. His condition was critical and Elkin didn't know what to do. Kaya didn't even look worried. She said that a horse with broken legs is useless, so there's no point in doing anything. But Elkin didn't even think about giving up. I remember that poor boy. He decided to help this horse. She even took off her maid's apron to put a splint on the horse's leg. If you help now, he might still survive. Hildegard watched with doubts. It was completely useless for these children to try. The horse would die anyway. But Elkin still tried to help because Max said that this horse was like a family member to him, and he wanted to do everything he could just to help. Hildegard had no intention of helping, but when she met the horse's gaze, his eyes were full of tears, and it reminded her of old times. The war was long and brutal. All the wounded and dead were simply raked into one pile. No one was going to help them. Even though they were still alive, the torment was so intense that they just wanted to die. One of these warriors who begged for death looked at Lady Korea and begged for death. Then she realized that it was better to kill than to suffer, so now she was going to kill this horse so that it would stop suffering. And Elkin was trying to stop her. Even if the horse dies, maybe it's worth helping him so that Max can see him at least one more time. Elkin begged me so hard to recover, and even with difficulty held back her heavy hand. Somehow he was able to kill her. And then Hildegard even decided to help him. Put a splint on the leg. That's the best they could do. However, there was another problem. The stick was stuck inside the horse's body, and it needed to be pulled out right now to stop the bleeding. Elkin and Kaya worked together. He pulled out the stick sharply, and she applied an apron to stop the bleeding. The horse was so scared that it began to resist and threw Elkin straight into the water. Hildegard continued to stop the bleeding. She didn't think that anything dangerous could happen to Elkin. Besides, he fell near the shore. However, she noticed that it was very deep there, and for some reason Elkin still did not emerge. She was already starting to worry about him. When he finally pulled out, she told him to stop fooling around and get out. But Elkin wasn't joking at all. It turned out to be very deep here, and he didn't know how to swim. Kaya couldn't let him die because he was in charge of her flow, so she left her horse and jumped into the water. Elkin sank deeper and deeper to the bottom of this lake. He still had hope for salvation, and then he saw Kai swimming after him. With difficulty, she was able to get it from the bottom of this lake and then swam with it along the shore. However, this guy was so heavy that she even got tired and her strength was running out. If this continues, Elkin will definitely choke because she has already entered his lungs. Hildegard decided to use her power and spoke to the tree near the shore directly into the water. And it was so loud that even in the castle this noise could be heard. Hildegard grabbed hold of this fallen tree, and thanks to it was able to pull Elkin to the shore. Little by little, he began to come to his senses and cough up water. Hildegard hadn't been this tense for a long time. And when was the last time she saved someone? Elkin was on the brink of life and death, and then his parents appeared in his memories again. That day. And everything was fine. But he didn't even think that he was seeing them for the last time. Elkin came to his senses after Kaya said his name many times and even slapped him. It was so painful, but at least he finally woke up. As it turned out, everything had already worked out. Kaya sent someone and the castle to the village while Elkin was unconscious. The horse had already received treatment and went to his owner. Elkin, when he realized that the horse was still alive, and then he saw a boy who was crying with joy, but later learned bad news. Elkin immediately remembered his parents with whom he could not say goodbye. They died somewhere far away on the plains where the battle took place. They went straight to the soldiers to help him again, but in the end, they died. Hildegard finally understood why he tried so hard to save that horse and let the boy see it, at least before he died. Of course, it will be hard for a horse with a broken leg to live, especially if it belongs to a child, just a favorite. But still, they won't be able to spend their last time together. Hildegard had nothing to say. She just looked at the whole situation. The king very quickly learned about everything that was happening in her castle. Hildegard rejected all the members of the royal family that the king sent her, and she even brought a northerner. He didn't even say a word, and now she's pretending to be a maid of honor. She's still the same stubborn girl. Over the last few days, Hildegard has gotten to know this pharmacist better and thinks he is very stupid, but in any case, you need to keep an eye on him. Besides, he makes good medicine. Elkin came to the knights one day and said that more ingredients were needed for the medicine. The northern ruptures that he brought were already running out. In addition, there were many other plants that could be prepared. Therefore, it was necessary to replenish the stock. Elkin wrote down what was needed on a piece of paper, but in the south, it is not easy to get the necessary ingredients. Even the carts that arrive several days at a time only deliver food and essential items, so it is possible to buy only part of what is needed. We need to find a person who can take care of this, and Elkin is exactly the right person. Again, it's her sister Griselda Annetta. A couple of hours later, he even told Kaya about this, about how there's a nice girl in the village with whom you are friends, and she is Lady Griselda's sister. Kaya had actually heard about it. But anyway, it didn't matter. Now she was busy making lemon cake. Griselda came and told the pharmacist that the herbs he asked for had arrived surprisingly quickly. Then she also saw this lemon cake and couldn't say anything. Elkin went to check the supply of herbs. When he named a person who could be trusted, I never thought that he would drag my sister into this. But Elkin really knew that it would be easy to get the medicines unnoticed through the shop where they worked. Griselda read that her sister was too young to be trusted with something like that. But Elkin had a different opinion, and he was also very glad that he would be able to meet his friend Vit. He had been in the castle for so long, and now he would finally see a familiar face. She was like a sweet little sister to him. Annetta was also very happy to see Elkin. They immediately found something to talk about. And then she saw her sister. Only between them there were colder relations. Griselda. What is the information in that first check? If everything is okay with the goods. After all, they are embarrassing in order to play. Although Annette was used to her sister's behavior, she was still a little upset. Elkin decided to introduce his friend to Kaya, who is a manifestation of the mistress. Annetta was delighted with this beautiful girl and was glad to meet her. Kaya asked if she was the child who liked Elkin. Annetta immediately blushed, and Elkin immediately said that it was not so. He did not say that, but Kaya made her own conclusions. Chef Gudzel. He came to this point. He works here a little, but guests come here so rarely. So he prepared snacks when he heard that the bone was coming. He came with a basket of baked goods to treat the workers and the guest. The chef said that he would also like to find his son at least once. They knighted him so long ago, and he would be delighted if he knew that his father works in such a castle with Lady Griselda, one of the riders. Elkin congratulated the cook on the fact that his son became a knight and asked what Vsadnik means. This title is awarded to only 5 knights. Keepers of Mormorata. Knight Commander Albert First Sword of the Horizon. Also, she is the youngest among the riders. This is all interesting, of course, but they went into the forest to look at the lake, because it is very beautiful there. Elkin said, you know, to be careful because it's very deep there. It's very beautiful. In fact, this is an ideal place to relax. You can take a break and eat delicious food from the chef. Kaya suddenly told Elkin that he didn't have to congratulate the cook because he obviously doesn't like the night. Aneta immediately blushed because she remembered that Elkin was a northerner. And of course, he would not want to talk about knights and horsemen. But she had forgotten about it. But Elkin said that everything is fine and one should get used to it in order to live in the capital. Even this castle is under the rule of the knights. By the way, he became interested in addition to the identity of the Lady of the Man who is the right castle and also serves in the ranks of the Knights of Embrick. How she managed to catch this unknown disease and then turn to such an unknown pharmacist. They were sure that the Lady of the Castle could have had a better doctor, and they searched all over the country for all sorts of doctors. However, they could not find a cure. So what kind of disease is this? If it really is a curse, then all Elkin can do is ease the pain for a while, but even if it is a disease, he can't diagnose it himself. Kaya said it was definitely a curse, but she couldn't explain it. However, she just felt like it was. But she couldn't say anything more because the mistress of the castle must remain a secret. If she knew the identity of the lady, she would not have been able to hide it well. Only one thought about this really wants to discuss everything. Elkin is actually surprised that the sisters are so different from each other, and Griselda keeps a secret. He constantly forgets that they are sisters. Kaya said that Griselda never talks about her sister at all. Annette didn't expect to hear such a name and said that everything was fine. My sister knows how to separate work and personal life, while she can't live without bragging about what kind of sister she has. In fact, Annetta and Griselda have different parents. Griselda is the daughter of an aunt, but they died early, so Annetta's parents raised Griselda as their own daughter even before Annetta was born. She was in the middle of the battlefield when Annetta was still a child. That's probably why she never thinks of her as her own sister. Annetta started to talk about all this, and Elkin didn't want her to be involved in this conversation at all. Annetta was already crying. Then Elkin and Kaya explain everything that there is a sister just worried about her. Many may have forgotten because it is so quiet here, but in this castle, many secrets will be revealed anyway. Griselda agreed with Elkin's idea to entrust the medicines to her sister, probably because she knows that she is a reliable mediator. Besides, Griselda usually doesn't listen to other people's opinions and doesn't act on their orders, but when her sister recommended Elkin, she listened. Annetta was so happy because she had never told her sister about this before. Griselda seemed to be deliberately hiding from everyone that she had such a cute little sister. Even Kaya was a little jealous and laughed at it. But suddenly, Hildegard felt that someone was watching. She already knew where it came from and who was doing it. That's why she said that it's not just a quiet place, there are many secrets and dangers here. Kaya told Elkin to leave here and play with Annetta. She herself went to check something. After all, she had set several mouse traps in the castle. Hildegard hurried into the castle. Around the corner of the corridor, she waited for the cook Goodsel. He was so frightened by the surprise that he dropped all the plates he was carrying. Kaya said not to sneak up like that again. And he didn't understand at all why she came here because she went out to rest, but returned so quickly. Kaya said that the lady had cut her hand and that she needed to get some ointment and bandages. Goodsel was surprised, but then he went to look for bandages. And he was surprised because he thought the lady could instantly heal such a wound because she was a Knight of the Sun. Hildegard quickly figured out this spy and immediately pinned him to the wall. She could have killed him in a second, but first she asked who sent him. Northerners don't usually do that. The cook didn't say anything, but she herself understood that it was King Mormodes. Then Hildegard asked Goodsel if he had really decided to become a spy so that his son would be accepted as a knight. But did he know that if the king made that boy a knight, then Hildegard could kill him, and no one would know about it? So she asked why the king needed her now since she was of no use. And the twist I expected was that this is not at all like that, and the king is just worried about her. Besides, a pharmacist came from the north, which means he will hate the lady. And if he finds out her identity, he might try to kill her, so the king was worried. Hildegard let the man go and simply laughed at his pathetic attempts to justify himself. She's in a good mood today, so she'll spare him. Well, give him a chance to run away and hide better. It would be better for him to get rid of the thought of his quiet life, was Mormorate. Because if Mormodes revealed to him the secret of Hildegard's identity, then he is not going to leave him alive after completing the task. Hildegard let the cook go. But in reality, it didn't understand why the king was constantly poking his nose where it didn't belong. Later in the evening, Griselda came to the lady to ask what had happened and why the new cook had run away. She was already getting ready to go see her sister off, but first decided to find out about it. Well, madam, Hildegard's of course could have told about the cook, but now she was more interested in why Grisel didn't say that she had a sister. In fact, Andre even talked about this several times, but Mrs. As usual, she ignores everything. The king quickly learned about everything that had happened, so he was assigned to one of the Knights of Theorian. The next day, the morning was very quiet and calm. Even the weather was good. Everyone was busy with their own affairs, and Griselda just walked around the neighborhood because there was nothing to do. But then she and Hazy noticed that someone was jumping here to the castle. She didn't expect to see Lord Albrecht, and he came here without warning, as a man commanding the Knights of Emmerich, so Griselda immediately greeted him with respect. She lives here in such a remote place, and Albrecht was very happy to meet her and chat a little, but it would have been good if he had warned her about his arrival in advance. In fact, this trip was unexpected for him too. He brought one person with him. Theorian Wyden met Griselda for the first time, and it was a great honor for him, because she is the first sword. She is one of the 5 horsemen, like the commander. After the war, she voluntarily took up a position that will not be forgotten, but he did not know that she would end up here. But still, she is truly a knight, so he looked at her with admiration. They went inside the castle to discuss everything. Lord Albrecht wanted Griselda to assign this knight to the castle. The commander had never interfered in the affairs of the castle before, but now something must have happened. Therian Wyden. The last name is the same, so he is simply not a lord. It turned out that up to this point the boy worked as a personal, but since the war with the North ended, he cannot rely on his nephew so much that he was sent to serve in the Western uniform with harsh conditions. He won't gain experience anywhere else with his plushies and skills, but Griselda is in charge of the castle garrison and could teach her something. Sir Albrecht, of course, knows that she is not the owner of this castle, but the rest of the soldiers, just like Theorion, do not know who owns this castle, so they will not dare to do anything to the hero. Even if he knew, he still wouldn't have dared to harm the hero, being still completely inexperienced. Albrecht asked how the Sun Knight was doing. The girl said that everything was fine, but then she remembered the conversation. Recently, the lady told that the cook Guzdel turned out to be a glorious spy from the king, and far from the first, this king constantly watches and manipulates Hildegard. Even after the war and hides this, she is not going to, but she will not back down next time, Griselda asked. And the king gave his approval for this knight to be appointed here. And Lord Albrecht said yes. Theorian, meanwhile, wandered around the castle, not expecting that this place would be so big. Finally, he heard someone's voices and thought it was the castle servants. Then he went to the room to look at them and saw this girl there. Hildegard saw a new face here for the first time. She looked at this guy questioningly. He was so amazed, and it seems that I even blushed and then immediately introduced myself. But when he realized his head, he noticed that there was no glue here anymore. Why did it disappear in 1 second? And at that very moment, the commander was passing by, so Therion went to him. Albrecht has already left. It's time for him to return, and Therion will stay here and teach Lady Griselda himself. However, when he left, he reminded Therion not to forget why he was really here. Griselda was generally unhappy with the situation. Now she will have to keep an eye on this parasite too in case he doesn't know who Lady Hildegard is. Then he needs to meet with Kai as little as possible. But it turned out that it was already late, and when he was examining the castle, who met the girl with red hair, he was very interested to know her name. Griselda ignored this question and gave a small tour of the night in this castle. A lot of things to do entered located in the waist and past few. Who comes? So you need to insert a safe castle priority tasks. The servants also saw the new guard, and they immediately began to ask what the name of this handsome man was. They liked him right away because he was a very nice and handsome boy, and also tall. Lately, there have been more and more new people in the castle. Griselda introduced Therion to almost all the workers. There was still a doctor left. But he is busy now, so later when he comes, we will be able to meet. The guy introduced the elderly man. Then they went into the forest to show him where the patrol usually starts and ends. Here she told, and everything that is needed, and the last most important thing, Griselda said love. Whoever gets through without her approval or arouses suspicion must be punished immediately, and the punishment can be determined by yourself. There is no need to report on the killed people, no matter who Therion served before, and I order to carry out. Let his loyalty belong to this castle. He must cast aside all doubts and keep the identity of the Lord a secret, put his safety above all for this. He is allowed anything it is allowed in the name of the king. Therion didn't expect people here to go to such extremes. There are enough guards on duty today, so he won't be working on the first day and can calmly explore the surroundings. But Therion actually already knows who owns this castle secret assignment from the commander. This is that he will have to report to him about everything that happens in this castle. Hildegard really is alias. What the hero really is does not know even better. The knight commander of this country, the old mountain, or the girl dazzling beauty. So many houses of words, but no one knows the truth. This hero, about whom they say a lot of interesting what kind of person. If the theory he finds out about this, then he will get a well-deserved reward. Suddenly in the forest he saw some guy with blue hair. He was sure that it was an intruder who had made his way here, and he was definitely a northerner. She saw a knife on him and took it as a weapon, which meant that the northerner had come to kill the Knight of the Sun. This is no longer a joke, so Therion ran to tell Lady Griselda about it. But then he remembered what she said. Anyone who checks the castle without her approval or arouses suspicion must be punished immediately. Then Therion took out her weapon and loudly approached the stranger, asking him who the northerner's target was. Right now, he was ready to cut off one of his hands or even kill him on the spot. Poor Elkin, who calmly took the herbs, was not at all prepared for such a turn of events. Early in the morning, he went into the forest and does not know at all that new guests have arrived here. Even when the knights passed by him, Elkin was busy examining the pretty flowers. And when he was about to cut some flowers and took out a knife, this knight appeared out of nowhere and called him a stranger. So I'm coming back to what's happening now. Elkin immediately realized that it was Emmerich's knight, but he didn't understand what was happening. Therion immediately knocked the knife out of his hands and was about to kill this northerner. Elkin could have actually died right now, but he was able to return purely by chance. He eventually fell to the ground and injured his nose, but continued to attack. Elkin, he was raised as best he could, but he still got hurt even more. There was a bad wound on his shoulder. Then he realized that this guy was not joking, and the whole truth was trying to kill. Well, at that moment, Kaya jumped out from the bushes and threw this knight away. She immediately approached Elkin to check if he was injured or not. Therion told this maid to move away from the suspicious, dangerous man. Kia said that the knight had gone mad and had just tried to kill the lady's doctor. Therion was shocked. He did not expect at all that the doctor would be a northerner and so young. When the situation became clear, if he kept apologizing to everyone for a long time, and he was very ashamed. Kaya personally cheated on the hand that was injured because she was worried that Elkin could still continue to do it. It seems to me, in fact, the situation was funny. For the first time, Elkin saw how Kaya was worried, because usually she is restrained and shows little emotion. She was glad that she would be in trouble if he got hurt. He doesn't know that he's actually treating her. However, he thought that she was genuinely worried about him, but she only tied his hand and made it worse. In general, the situation allowed us to go. Therion came up to introduce himself properly. He said that Elkin is a big guy, but rather clumsy. Why doesn't he, as a northerner, know the basics of self-defense? It seemed like a reproach. Elkin said that it was Therion's fault, and that he should first learn to distinguish southerners from friends and foes. Therion just went silent. He didn't really understand the reason why the commander sent him here and why the Sun Knight decided to bring this family man as his doctor. What does that even mean? And doesn't this doctor know who his patient is? And what is said in the Sun hurts? If this is true, then chaos will reign in the country. Therion must carry out his mission with this information confusing him. He is not here to think about it. He needs to know the true identity of the Sun King and her illness. All this information, this northerner Elkin needs to be closely monitored, and perhaps someday he will spill the beans. And if possible, Therion should at least improve his image to please this cute girl, because for now he has no chance at all. She doesn't even want to tell him her name, but it's for the best. Griselda is so tired of everything and just wants to go back to the very beginning of the day. It was her calm morning. In the evening, the commander of the knights had already received a message from Therion. He confirmed the information that the knight or the sun was ill and had brought Severianen as her doctor, and that he too was not yet familiar with her. That is why the knights were so urgently ordered to find a doctor. Serious illness, unknown reasons that struck the immortal cause, which is blessed by the side of the sun and Severianin. Years ago, when the Knights of the Sun disappeared, there was a battle on the plains of Kantala. Link's son suddenly disappeared during the battle. Because of this, the army of the kingdom suffered a crushing defeat, and everyone thought that the Knight of the Sun was captured in the north, or that the sun would return to the sky. But there is sun in her face, soon returned without a single scratch. After that, she continued to win the battle and brought the north to its knees in a year. This is a historical fact. Albrecht was going to hire mercenaries who were smarter about keeping up with this because he needed to find something. He was going to send them to the place where the Knight of the Sun had disappeared years ago on the border on the plains of Kantella. In the north a few years ago, there were big problems of war which lasted for years. Even animals ran away from this mountain. It would have been hard work to survive even one winter, and it was also necessary to take care of Elkin. He will soon become an adult, and the headman took care of him only because he is the main one in the village. But he was really worried even if Elkin's body grew up. He's still a boy. He doesn't even know how to hunt. All his parents taught him was to read books and recognize herbs. Old age, you still can't forget his face when they told him about his parents' death. In addition, many people in the village have become healthier thanks to his parents, so the headman wants to grab him for their such. The wife also wanted to do this, but the food supplies are almost tense, and besides, they have small children who need to be well fed. It is better to ask someone else to allow Elkin, for example Delexa, who has already left the family and went to live on the coast. People who can move have already started leaving the village one by one, because it is hard to continue living here, and the headman decided to ask if Elkin wanted to live in another village. The boy actually heard this whole conversation then, and he himself realized that he needed to leave. He collected his things, he didn't tell anyone, and left. However, someone did notice this little boy asked, Elkin will also go to the sea, where there is a lot of food because giant monsters live there. It is dangerous. Elkin said he was going to go south and there were many other things there, like weird nobles' knights who weren't afraid of death and a witch maybe. After that, he set off on his journey forever. Therion tried very hard to get close to the knights in this castle, and even to make company to those who stand guard, because it can be boring. Therion's attention and help. For some reason, all the inhabitants of this castle treated him like a frivolous little child, or too cautious than you. Because of this, Therion couldn't find out anything because no one even talked to him. But then one of those days he saw that some girl had arrived. They let her in, but he decided to stop her and ask what brought her here and what was in her bag. Annetta didn't know how to react to such rudeness, but she said that she had brought the goods that Elkin had ordered. Therion laughed. He couldn't believe that Elkin was working with such a small child. After all, he was a real fool. Elkin had already come to this point to stop the knight who so enjoyed picking on a child who was weaker than him. Annetta was happy to see him, and they began to ignore this knight. But he continued to walk around and taunt. He told Elkin to behave like a noble knight on a white horse saving this girl. Elkin said that Annette does not need to be saved because she herself can calmly resist Therion. And the knight of course got angry because of these words. He did not understand how pathetic the northerner dared to hold the imperial knight, and even said that the truth would cut off his hand. But Elkin was not afraid. He was ready to accept this challenge. Annette saw him like this for the first time and didn't know what to do. Why were they both so tense? But everything finally stopped when Griselda came. It was worth taking her and said that I am from others to you. They immediately start to quarrel, and the worst thing is that Elkin doesn't even know how to fight, but for some reason always follows the lead. Griselda told the knight that she came here on her behalf at the request of the lady, so he must not be rude to her. But in the end, everyone finally ran away and Annette didn't know what to do. She remembered that her sister had said last time that Annette was coming here for work, not to play. So now she was going to go back with me right away after she left the goods. But suddenly her sister stopped her and suggested that they talk a little in private if they had time. Annette couldn't believe it was the first time her older sister invited her into her room to talk, so of course she agreed. Therion, meanwhile, continued to follow Kaya everywhere, offering her help. Im just clung to her. It was really annoying. Hildegard even had to use her powers of rapid disappearance to get rid of this parasite. And, fortunately, he was not allowed to go to the third floor. Where is the ladies' chamber? Hildegard personally brought dinner for herself and her maids so that they could eat together. Hazy didn't even know how to accept the food that the lady served her. But in fact, they were comfortable together. Hildegard started complaining about this shaggy blonde guy who was really annoying her. This knight obviously came on the king's orders. He is so easy to read. But Hildegard doesn't understand whether he is cunning or just stupid. She can't kill him thoughtlessly because he is the nephew in charge. He didn't know yet that Kaya was the mistress, unlike the cook last time, perhaps because the king didn't tell the commander about it. Therion is a relative of the Imperial Knight Commander, so the Sun Knight can easily get rid of him. But then the king can also get information from him, so he can't be eliminated. This king just got more complicated. The king is so eager to learn Hildegard's identity because he fears that her influence among his followers will grow, and that she might conspire with his enemies. The king got his current position by using her, so he tries to isolate her completely. Now he hasn't held her in his hands. Weiden is a prominent family from the south that is worth fearing, and they managed to make a great contribution to the Northern War by sending their best knights. They also lost a lot from it. They continue to lose heirs in the family. Considering his age with Therion, he must have lost many brothers and sisters in his life. Well, now he wasn't worried about it at all. He had worse problems. He didn't know what to do because everyone here suspects him of something. In this situation, he can't gather information. But then he thought that if he could find out what medicines the gentlemen were taking, he would find out what disease she was suffering from. Now he had finally found something to do. Elkin was just approaching his room with a bag of grass when he saw a knight running up. He also ran into the room and tried to close the door but didn't have time. This parasite left his foot in the door together and did not let the door close, tried to go inside, and even offered to help. But then he quarreled with me again. Elkin told him to stop because Lady Griselda had ordered that no one should be allowed into the pharmacy. Therion stopped because it was an order, and he said that he came not only because of this. In fact, he would like to know a little more about the maid Kai and what kind of person she is. If she is a Freelina, then she must be from a less noble family, but she looks a little eccentric. Elkin also thought that Kaya was very unique. She was quite stern with people and completely unperturbed. However, she is a very reliable and good person, and at least she is definitely better than Therion. Before he had time to object, Elkin closed the door right in front of him. Therion started to get angry again at this doctor who keeps acting like he's the smartest. But now he needs to retreat. In fact, Therion has been tried to be removed from all affairs and activities all his life because when he interfered, only problems appeared. When he offered help, everyone refused, and when he was worried, he was removed. And it was like that all his life. And now the doctor said that someone is better than Therion. He's been listening to this his whole life, and it's really boring. Annetta came to her older sister's room for the first time. It had been several years since they had lived together, but it was her first time visiting this place, and it was really interesting. It was even cute how my sister was too lazy to clean up, and a series of at the table opposite each other, and that we have something to talk about. Annette had never been here before, and most of the time she didn't even see the faces of the remaining sisters because she was too busy. But now that she invited them into her room and is still silent, it's so unnerving. I wonder what she wants to talk about and why she looks so worried. Griselda actually has nothing to talk about with Annette. And she brought her sister here only because Hildegard recently told her that she needs to spend more time with her sister. Then she decided to ask the usual questions about life. How are father and mother and at home? Everything is fine. There was nothing to talk about anyway, and it was awkward. Then she decided to take the situation into her own hands and led the conversation herself. Griselda became curious about how her sister knew Elkin. Annette blushed, but decided to tell the story of what happened a year ago. Annette was returning home from the castle. She came to her sister, but again could not see her. Residents were passing by, and for some reason they were swearing loudly because they had to see the Northerners in the capital. Annette became curious, and then she saw a boy nearby. He really was a Northerner. Elkin even got lost in the capital and spent his last money to pay for the carriage. Today, he even started nowhere. He just stopped. He had no strength left, so he sat under the bridge. Some nice couple helped me. They said they have a small capital, but they can't go together. However, if he needs help or wants to meet, he can simply come to the capital and they will always be glad to see him. Elkin came to the capital, but he just couldn't find them. Now he wondered why he came here at all. Was it really to be treated for a long time, or because he wanted to believe what the elderly couple told him? He was drowning in negative thoughts when suddenly he heard a voice. Some girl asked what he was doing there. Elkin was surprised because she didn't seem to be going to scold him. So the girl asked him what had happened. Elkin said that she came to the north but got lost and asked her if she knew where Lindemann's shop was. He didn't want to ask other people because he knew they didn't like him very much. But this girl told him that Lindemann's paw was in the opposite direction from here, and to get there you'd have to walk for a few more hours. Elkin thanked her for the information and continued to sit. For some reason, he kept looking at the river. Annette noticed this in his appearance, then she thought that he might be tired and hungry. She decided to go down to him and handed him a sandwich, which she actually made for her sister so that they could be together. But since she couldn't meet her today, she offered it to this boy. She could only hope that now someone else will eat it. Elkin received kindness from the locals for the first time, and then he met this girl. In fact, she showed up at the right time. She helped him and even gave him food when he was literally dying of hunger. Then they quickly found a common language and I had a lot of topics for conversation. In a way, they met thanks to Griselda. Suddenly, a maid entered the room to tell about dinner, but she didn't know that Griselda had guests. Annette. I wish it was time to leave already because my sister might be busy, but Griselda suddenly suggested that she stay for dinner. The lady definitely won't object. Although it won't be a luxurious need because they recently lost one of the cooks. But in the morning, she still happily agreed. She didn't know that she had gone to her sister today. It would have been more like a good dream. Annetta was glad that she would be able to see Elkin and Kaya again and also spend time with her sister. And Griselda realized that she should have done this much earlier, and she avoided her sister throughout the series.